Hey, welcome back. It's Key of W here, and with me,
It's me, Empfindsamer.
we're playing Saints of Virtue, the very obscure late 90s uh, Christian game. If you want to see more, we've done the first level already. You can watch that video. Otherwise, we're ready to start level 2. How do you feel?
Uh, I feel great.
Excellent. So, level 2 is called
Feel
the
great.
Labyrinths of Legalism. So, we're going to start off in a pretty big maze here. Oh.
Okay.
Great start to this level. Uh, I'm just
Just
going to
gonna say
say,
the
yeah,
like dropping you in winding caves is kind of the theme of this game. It feels like.
I think most of the other levels don't ambush you quite so. I'm just gonna keep my eye open for these guys. What do you think of this? Oh, hold on. What do you think of this enemy design here?
I mean, I kind of like the fact that it's called fear and it just kind of comes out of nowhere and rushes at you.
Yeah, I
Uh,
genuinely my favorite enemy design in the whole game.
yeah, jump scares a la 1999, I guess.
Yeah. Uh, well, it's also great not just like from a visual perspective, but design wise, like how it changes the combat of the game. I practiced this a little earlier, so I got some chance to think about it again, and genuinely my favorite way of interacting because it is unique amongst all the enemies of the game.
I hadn't really noticed in the last level any difference between the behaviors of the enemies.
Yeah,
Um,
there was just the two, um, vanity and worldliness,
yeah.
and they mostly just hung out from a distance and took pot shots. The difference between it was worldliness moved faster, was a smaller target, and took fewer hits to go down. Um, I'm doing that follow the left wall routine here. So if you're wondering like where the heck are we? We're in this nondescript maze. Uh, but yeah,
Honestly, I'm not even paying attention to the route. I'm just watching you run down the halls
I know
randomly.
this is what it's like. But yeah, the fear enemy is great because it is the only enemy that prefers to come up into melee range, and it does it really fast. Moves the fastest, and it comes up to you basically silently. Let's head down this way and see what happens. Um, so it is my favorite design in the whole entire game. Oh dear.
I'm
Okay.
waiting for us to turn a corner and then suddenly turn around, and it's going to be right there behind us.
Yeah. Okay, so I've picked up a rock. This will be somewhat important. So I should probably talk about what this level is, because if you've stumbled on this video, what you're thinking is, what the heck is this game? Why does everything look
How do I
exactly the
get
same?
out of here?
Also, that. How do I get up here?
How do I get out of
I
here?
was wondering that. Yeah.
So it's the Labyrinths of Legalism, so of course everything is a maze. I'm opening the auto map. Okay, I haven't gone this way yet. That's good. Um, the Labyrinths of Legalism. So in a game that is, 90% symbolism, we of course are going to have some kind of symbolism involved with that. So this level is all mazes. Oh, I'm going the right way. When I see the lead pipe, I know I'm going the right way. Um,
Hmm.
so this level is a series of mazes. Unfortunately, it's pretty much entirely linear. Like, we do one maze, then we do the next, then we do the next. This one's called the Twisty Maze, and the only way to know that is to finish the maze and then come back to the maze. Um, and it'll tell you the title.
Teammates,
Another trick with
great
this,
name.
I need to bring up the map to show this. So we can see on the map the walls of this maze. Now, if I keep going, I think, is it going to be here? Now, look, the walls don't show up on the map. Also, you'll notice
Huh.
I can go straight through to there, but it looks like there's a wall in front of me if you're looking at the map. So this is a neat little trick the designers do just to mess with your head. I'm going to turn off the map for just a second. This is a wall, but I can walk through it here. And as soon as I do, I'm in the hallway that was on that map. But I can't walk back through the wall. It is, in fact, now just a regular wall. This maze has numerous of those. Can I zoom this out? No, let's zoom that out a little bit. This maze has numerous locations that just don't appear on the map. Um, was this one of them? Because I went this way. No, these walls appear. Um, and it's a neat little trick for keeping you very frustrated and confused. Uh, I don't know if it is the most fun way to design a maze. Did I just do a loop? I think I just did a loop. I actually wanted to go back to where I found the lead pipe, but I don't know where that is anymore. Is it
It's
this?
interesting because
Yeah.
thinking about it from like a technical perspective, all you really have to do is just put a texture on one side of the wall and not the other side, I guess,
Yeah, I guess
or
so.
like a transparent texture. I'm not sure, but it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's I have some thoughts on some of the game design choices.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I feel like, I mean, I don't remember what most games were doing in 1999, but it's nice to see them trying to come up with clever ways to, um, you know,
yeah. It wouldn't be so
mix
bad.
things up a little bit.
Ooh, hold on. I remember this. This is in fact toward the end of the maze. Look where we are. There's no walls on the map. This is a one way. As soon as we go through this little hallway, we're going to be stuck. But there's this little hairpin corner here, and that will lead us out. And I got out of there faster than I thought I would. I thought I'd be stumbling around a lot more. Anyway, you were saying.
Just, I was saying, I think it's
Yeah.
interesting they were finding ways to mix things up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, if there was just like more textures and stuff on the walls, it'd be easier. It's just all one texture. So in the first level, I talked about a little bit. Well, we both did, but I mentioned it's my favorite level. I thought aesthetically it was good, thematically it was kind of interesting, but it kind of fell apart in the messaging a bit. I feel this level is the opposite. The messaging is like on point, but the level design is unfortunately kind of dull. So now we enter what's called the Turnstile Maze, and I'm going to stand here and explain it because it will be difficult to see what is happening in just a minute. So, nope, that's the scroll I picked up, which, by the way, is necessary, of course. So if you miss the scroll and then get through this maze, it's really hard to get back. So this maze is not on the map. I just opened the map, you can tell, and I just close the map. Nothing will show up. As soon as I walk in that room, I'm going to get spun around really quick. It will be impossible for me to tell what direction I'm facing. And yes, this is a series of identical rooms going in every single direction. That is the maze. My way to get through, actually, I think the intended way to get through is I'm going to take the rock I picked up because I don't really need it for anything else, and I'm going to just toss it. And it sounds like metal hitting the ground, but that's the rock there. So as soon as I step in here, cool. Now I find where I threw the rock. That is going straight forward. It's just so mean.
Just imagining it is, first of all, disorienting, and second of all, I feel like this really, like,
Yeah.
I remember playing the was it the maze, the train car maze thing in Myst back in the day,
Yeah.
and thinking that was awful.
Yeah.
And
This is
and if you had no
so
way,
much.
I mean, the rock is a smart idea because if you didn't have that, you'd just be guessing.
Yeah, you basically would be guessing. You can also use the map. See now on that yellow dot sort of in the center, that is the rock where it's been on the map. So when I go in there, you see it does that, and then I just go back to it. So I've been heading straight so far. I happen to know where the exit to the maze is. The first time I did this, I didn't know. And even using this technique, it was incredibly frustrating because the maze is not infinite. It's a 6x6 grid. I know this because I had to figure it out. The 6x6 grid, the edges are all fake doors. So down there, that looks like, so we have this hallway, we have that one, and then we have this doorway. Looks like an exit. It's a fake one. So if I enter the room just before, the game will teleport me closer to the center of the maze. So it will feel like I'm moving infinitely. And in fact, if I were to go toward that exit, which is fake, and throw my rock into it, I would never ever get the rock back. So
Oh no.
the correct way is I do have to turn to the left at least once. I probably should have saved before I even entered this maze because there is the possibility that I screw it up. Now that I've entered this, I turn back to the right because basically it's straight ahead from the entrance and one to the left.
This is very frustrating.
You and me both, brother. Okay. So this should be the actual exit. If it's not, this is going to be quite the adventure. Where's that rock? There it is. So I'm not worried. Well, I'm going to keep the rock. I don't really need it. But if I throw, well, if it's the correct exit, it shouldn't matter. But I'm going to throw the rock, see what happens. So I'm going to do it with the map. Yeah, it should be fine. Yep, this is the real exit.
Yeah. I think this is one of those times where just going through it, having already known the solution, is probably preferable to actually struggling through it on camera.
It really is not worth doing.
It's an interesting idea, one of
Yeah.
those ideas that's like maybe not actually fun in practice, but conceptually, if you're looking to like put people in a position playing it where they're frustrated and don't know it, feel
Yeah.
lost and feel as if they're infinitely trapped in this maze, very effective in that respect.
Yeah.
But as far as like a gameplay decision,
Yes.
I don't know about it.
100%. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you to hold on to that thought because I'm going to continue that line of reasoning. But first, I want to do this. So in the first level, we had these doors that would have worldly wisdom, and we'd have to counter it with Bible verses. This is the only level that doesn't do it with doors. We kind of have this pillar up here. So the purpose of this level, which you would only know if you watched the previous video and saw the title card for this level, which I can't get to bring back, it's fine, is that we have to destroy the Palace of Pride. We do so by weakening the pillars. We're kind of under it. Unfortunately, we will never go into the Palace of Pride, but we will take a look at it. And so we do it, of course, with scripture, because that is the way this is intended to
Follow all
work.
the rules. That's all that matters.
Luckily, the scroll we picked up is, in fact, the one we will use for this.
No one will be declared righteous in his sight by observing the law. Rather, through the law, we become conscious of sin.
There we are. Yeah. I like it. I feel like that one works. I don't know. How do you feel about that one?
I think it's an interesting topic, like legalism as a topic.
Yeah.
That's one of those terms that I feel like I only really ever heard in the context of like church sermons or youth group. People don't really talk about legalism outside of
Yeah.
I guess the church, or even maybe specifically evangelical or Protestant church. But not to go too far down that line of reasoning, just the concept of that verse being a counter to that topic is an interesting concept because we talked a lot about growing up in the church, growing up, the idea of not being saved by our own strength or our own ability to, be righteous in our own sight. And I think the concept of, there being a bunch of rules to follow in the Bible and whatnot is one of those concepts where it can be kind of confusing because on the one hand you're told follow the rules because they're what's right in the eyes of God, and that's to be a good person, to be a good Christian, you need to follow these rules. But then we're also told, but it's not about following the rules; it's about faith, and it's about being saved by your faith. And so it can be kind of confusing because you're like, well, am I supposed to follow the rules? Is that what makes me a good person, or does it not matter that I follow the rules? So even the fact that I've been kind of rambling on about this sort of confusing aspect of the term growing up, and the fact that this level is in fact a maze is sort of an interesting connection.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I was going to bring that up if you didn't. I'm going to now bring up some things we saw. So this is in fact the Palace of Pride. Let me bring that text back up. Will it do it if I do this? Yes. So that was supposedly we were just under there and we cracked one of the pillars. Unfortunately, due to limitations of the engine, this is what we look at instead. It's very obviously a 2D sprite. It's about 20 feet away and is maybe twice as tall as us. But it's a kind of cool thing. I actually checked. You can look up the maps for this game. If you were to find this location on the map and look towards the hub area where I cracked the pillar, the Palace of Pride is indeed exactly this direction. So the designers actually built the level so it does, in fact, have some sort of internal consistency. It's just there was no way engine-wise we'd be able to look that far away and see an object that big.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It is kind of funny because if you actually look around, you sort of see the facade crack a little bit because, like, the background, you're like, wait, that wall is really close.
Yeah, you can tell from the texture that it's actually quite close to you.
Yeah, but I will say it is pretty neat that the Palace of Pride has that 6 satellite dish. I feel like you might
Yeah.
be able to get some good signal there.
I
So while I was talking about my thoughts earlier, we blitzed through a couple of rooms of enemies we hadn't seen before. I'm sure we'll see more of them, but what was that we encountered?
So we just encountered self-righteousness, and there's some more here. This is my second favorite enemy in the game. Although right now, this one is pissing me off. Die already. Oh my goodness. There we go. So the gimmick here, if you couldn't tell, is that some of your shots don't work. I think the intention is that the powdered wig he wears is like a shield, so you have to hit him dead on. But the collision is still very wonky. You really have to be dead center. So even hitting him on the cheek, the wig seems to absorb the blow. But sometimes I shot through the wig and it's fine. So it ends up in practice being like sometimes your shots just don't work. Oop.
Yeah. Oh. Okay.
So yeah, this level's called the Trap Dungeon.
okay.
So those are some of the traps. A little bit underwhelming, I must say.
But it really is annoying, though. That was the goal.
Yeah. I mean, if I was in this pit and I didn't have the ability to look with my mouse, as the Saints X patch does, I would not be able to hit the enemy, so I'd have to jump out. So it does do that at the very least.
Yeah.
But yeah, the only level that's not technically a maze, so it's interesting. But otherwise, it's all labyrinths. And as you were bringing up, like, trying to talk about legalism, it feels like it's like going through a maze of some kind. Oh, yeah, that door will do that when you approach.
Yeah.
So this is why we get the lead pipe. So if you forget the lead pipe, or you somehow lose it, this area becomes inaccessible, but luckily there is no object behind that door that is required to complete the game. But we're going to want what's behind the door. Gonna throw it. Look at that, first try.
Perfect shot.
Yep. I also love this room for my practice thing. Instead of going into the room, I'm just going to do that. And because he's a melee attacker, he can't hit me, so we can take a nice good look at him. Well,
Yeah.
Shoot that one. Take a good look at that one. Oh, no, he can hit me. Oh, wow. That's the first time I've ever been hit back there. First time for everything on camera. I really like the hair on Fear because it's just shackles. So it really sets the tone for... Oh, right. Don't go in this room. This one. The ceiling. Yeah, what a trap. Look at that. I just duck slightly and... Oh, no.
Yeah. I was going to say the design of both of those enemies is pretty nice. I like that self-righteousness literally was like a judge.
Yep. By the way, this is another obvious trap. I wonder if it's possible using strafe running to get through it, but I'm not going to try. I'm just going to let it start and then back out. And there we go. The sound effect plays a little too long in this version. That's okay. But yeah, he looks like a judge. And the other thing you might notice, taking another close look at him, not just the wig, but look at the collar and see if there's anything you can see on that.
Well, what I was gonna say it looked like, but I guess we'll wait till we find another one. Is it reminded me of like a minister collar?
Yeah, it's the clerical collar.
Yeah.
So it's I think it makes this level's messaging, like I was saying, this one is good messaging, not so great gameplay as opposed to level 1. Here's a scroll you don't need, but I'm picking it up anyway. It's that like legalism. Like the designers here, every level is some kind of critique of worldliness in some way, but this level is sort of critiquing culture within Christianity, whereas the first level was trying to critique secular culture. I'll talk about this weapon as soon as I finish my thought. And so they're a little bit more pinpoint accurate when they're critiquing the culture they live in, because legalism, as Christians talk about it, not like the moral philosophy or the other type of philosophy, but the Christian concept of legalism, apparently don't have to duck anymore, is kind of unique to Christianity, where it's that fight between like how much of your salvation is dependent on your behavior and how much of it is not, and how much do you have to earn your forgiveness. And so the designers are like batting 1,000 when it comes to the design of that message, in that oftentimes the sources of the legalism, the sources of the messaging that's sort of keeping people in fear is, you know, the church and the state.
Yeah.
Like the
it's
state
coming from within the house.
Yeah, the call's coming from within the house. The state represented by the powdered wig and the church represented by the clerical collar, that's who's causing the problem. Yeah, so it really feels like it's hitting the target dead on in the center on this level to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've lost all my shielding. With the self-righteous enemies, it's really hard to duck and dodge because you have to be dead on with your firing. So if you're running back and forth like this, it's really hard to hit them right. So you have to stand still and hit the spot. So you let them get a lot of pot shots in.
Yeah. So this weapon you've got now, though, is it just more powerful, or is it actually working?
So do I really want to be using this weapon? Does it matter? I don't know. So there's only 3 weapons in the game. The first weapon here is our regular sword. We have the sword blaster, which is a 2-handed sword. We have the sword hammer, which is a 3-handed sword. And then we have the sword sword, which is a 4-handed sword. So the sword blaster is the sword hammer, which is a 4-handed sword. And then we have the sword hammer, which is a 3-handed sword. So which kind of functions like a shotgun. Like it has a slower fire speed, but it does more damage. I've been using it just to kind of show it here. So
Well, I can tell that it does more damage because it's 2 swords instead of 1 sword.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like the weapon design really is nothing to write home about in this game. I know I'm gonna get ambushed the moment I walk in this room.
Nope.
But we're good.
No.
That's nice.
Maybe.
Oh, there he is.
Ah! That's kind of mean.
Yeah. This game has a nasty habit of if you fall off an edge of something, it drops your view so that you're looking down,
Oh, yeah.
which isn't very helpful. Okay.
I wonder if that's intended or not.
Yeah, I have no idea. It could just be a quirk of the engine.
Yeah.
Anyway. But yeah, like, the enemy design in this level is the best. Good grief, stop moving around. Let me hit you. Okay. And, you know, the discussion of legalism is something that is more applicable. You know, the main character is a young Christian boy, another scroll we won't use. Then legalism is probably a more pressing concern than, say, Kurt Cobain's music.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about this. We touched on it a little bit, and you know, I think kind of it is interesting because I do think it's a topic that's going to be much more relevant to people playing the game who are in fact Christians or you know familiar with the church. I would guess that the conversation around legalism as we talk about it is probably pretty like recent in terms of like historical church teaching and in terms of like evangelical or Protestant teaching. I don't know if it was a super common topic leading up to, but I would imagine the last
I'm gonna
couple centuries maybe.
Stop you because I need to explain what this room is, and we might go back and forth between discussing the scintillating topic of legalism and me explaining what the heck I'm doing in this room. So I do need to explain because if you don't know what's going on, it looks like I'm doing random stuff. So the trap room is not trap music, but it's a room. There's several switches around this room I need to do to unlock that door. Figuring out the puzzles here is mostly trial and error. It's kind of weird. Some of them are like interesting ideas that are difficult to pan out with this engine. Others of them are just really crazy. So I'm going to, when I need to, I will jump in and say what is happening. The first thing I'm going to do is try to get up there. And to do that, I need to pull on a chain. So you can probably start seeing them on the walls here. So like, for instance, here's one I can pull. It does nothing. So I want to, platform is hell on earth on this. I want to pull this one. And immediately that platform appears. So that's the kind of stuff we'll do. This will be self-explanatory here. So go ahead and continue your thoughts, David.
Well, my first thought is after what you said, if you don't edit in some trap music here, I'm going to be disappointed in you.
Yeah.
But the other thing I was going to say, so thinking about like legalism as a topic, I feel like the kind of common example that would often be used would be the Pharisees and their obsession with the law and like.
Sorry, that's just the funniest sound. I'm going to use the mini map on this. It just makes it easier to tell where I'm going. Continue. Yeah.
But the contrast of the picture of the Pharisees being all about like you have to follow all of these customs and rituals in order to be purified and all that, and then the idea that Jesus came in and said, no, this doesn't actually matter. You just need to be, you know, have faith, and you know, it's the heart that matters. I'm obviously grossly simplifying, but I feel like that whole sort of discussion, nice work, is one that I feel like was a really common topic for at least in my memory growing up. This topic of like, and it can be almost sort of not self-referential, but like even in talking about it, you can start to be legalistic about like not being legalistic. Like it's sort of this thing where the deeper you try to go into it, like prove you're not being legalistic.
Sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you. I'm taking the shortcut back.
Yeah, perfect.
Anyway, continue.
Yeah, I don't know. Just I feel like it, again, it sort of ties into the theme of the level where it's this kind of never-ending maze of like you can always try to posture yourself as being, you know, more righteous according to the law, or like, oh no, I don't care about the law, so therefore I'm more righteous than
Yeah.
the people who do care about the law, and it becomes this real self kind of
Yeah.
circling
Eating its
recursive
own
pattern.
tail, yeah. Before I go here, this is a cage. If I go there, it'll drop down and soft lock me. To get through that, I need to press a switch. I'm going to explain that because otherwise I'm pressing this switch for no reason, and that never does anything, and you won't know why. That disables this. I will go down there in a moment. Up here, there are several traps that I'm going to disable. It's just not worth it to demonstrate and then reload stuff. This trap here is stopped by a floor tile here. There's a sound effect, hopefully you can hear it. This floor tile stops this trap. And then this thing here is a stone block I have to raise. Some of these platforms, some of these little, you can barely see switches, will raise the block and others will lower it. And I practice this level so I know which ones I want to raise. I don't want to go through the whole rigmarole of figuring it out. This is 1. This is 2. There are 2 more. However, I only need to hit 3 total, and then I can crouch under the stone block. And the last bit is when I do this, the character mentions they didn't hear anything, which is weird because I definitely heard the lever being pulled. But really, around the back, there's another lever. And that is the correct one to press. So all of that I wanted to explain. The next parts of this you can tell exactly what's happening. There's going to be another spinning trap. So just if you see me starting to look in all sorts of directions uncontrollably, it is because of a trap. All right, let's get back to the discussion of the more interesting bit.
I think that was kind of interesting. It is sort of
Yeah.
a bummer not to see these things go off, but I can see why it would be sort of annoying to have to demo it and then reload.
Yeah.
But does that cage actually soft lock you? Like you just have to reload a save if you get
Yes,
stuck in it?
the cage soft locks you.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's another case of like the designers have an idea which from the theming of things is interesting, but then it's not something that I enjoy in a game. I don't enjoy forced soft locks in this type of game. Sometimes a soft lock is just a loss, but here it would come down and we can't get out. There's nothing we can do except reload a save.
Yeah.
And, it's not as bad as what Sierra used to do, so it's really not a huge deal. It's just
Yeah.
I just have to explain what would happen if you screw up, and you'll have to just take my word for it. And if you really, really want to see it, you can download the game yourself and then do a bad job at it. Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. I feel like a room like this with a bunch of traps you have to disarm, almost like Indiana Jones style, is kind of an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Like I'm surprised there's not like a boulder that comes in and chases you down.
I like the concept, but in this game engine, it ends up being a lot more frustrating than it should be. Right? It's not a platform.
I imagine engine. It's kind of a trial and error thing. I imagine you're probably not catching those tiles the first time you play it.
Yep. True.
But yeah, interesting concept. I guess the idea there is like navigating through all of the sort of legalese of
Absolutely. So we're back.
It's sort of like
we're back in the hub. Yeah. That's the first place we came in, then we went to the trap dungeon there. We come around. So every time we enter and exit a new area, it opens up the next part of the hub. We can't do this pillar yet, so like this one.
Christianity is a great burden because of its many rules.
Neither of these will solve it, so we're gonna ignore it for now. But yeah, the legalism really. This is one of the levels where like just the design of the level really complements the messaging for me. Because there's other levels where it feels like the designers have to put in some text or some object to like hammer home like, isn't this bad, see? Whereas this one is like, yeah, legalism is a maze. Speaking of mazes, this is the abstract maze. Do you remember this one?
I don't remember this one as much. I actually remembered the previous room a bit more. Or actually, maybe I was thinking of a different room. The one that we walked into before reminded me of something. I do sort of remember it. This one I don't remember as much.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this is the dullest part. I said messaging on point. I'm giving the developers 10 out of 10 for that. But just ends up being kind of dull to play. This is just a maze. And instead of walls, we can fall off. But it's safe. Like you can actually drop off there and not even take fall damage. And there's elevators to get you back up. When I first played this, I took a look at this giant room and said, "At last, an area with no enemies." But that is not true. We will see. So the way the enemies work in this game is the minute they know where you are, they make a beeline for your location. Not a very smart AI, they just make a beeline, but they can go to your Y position almost instantaneously. So all of the enemies are on the lower level, and the minute you get close, they're going to pop up and just gun for you. So it's just jump scare central. So when I first played this, I chickened out. I would jump to the bottom and I would wander around the bottom of the maze and kill as many enemies as I could there so I didn't get jump scared. And then I would take the elevator back up and solve the maze in peace and quiet. But I'm gonna get jump scared. There he is. There he is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are gonna come up from the side or behind me, which is gonna make it even more fun. So be prepared to suddenly hear me getting shellacked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't wait for that.
There are 2 scrolls here. I'm going to get them both just to show you, but only one of them is required. There he is. Oh, doggone it.
That's kind of annoying.
Yeah. Only one of the scrolls is required. I'm going to try to get both of them just because I can't. Actually, it's all the way over there, so I need to find a way to that spot. So you can see how things are done, but this is the whole level. So this is
I would say this is definitely a little bit less interesting.
Yeah.
I think only because not only is it just a maze, but also we've already been through a couple mazes, so the impact of like, oh hey, it's a maze is maybe a little bit lessened, but sort of the visual of it is kind of interesting. I feel like maybe a more modern graphical representation would be more impactful.
Yeah, I don't think the developers were necessarily out of ideas. Like, I don't want to make that accusation without knowing, but it looks like the type of thing you would design if you were out of ideas, right? Oh.
Yeah, because it's just like, hey, here's a bunch of paths. I feel like anybody, you drop them in Unreal Engine with a bunch of building blocks, could make a maze.
Yeah.
And make you walk around on it. But not to say again that this is not effective at all. It's again driving home that idea that you're trapped in this maze and you can sort of see the goal, but you don't have any idea how to get there.
Yeah.
And it's like someone told you, hey, just follow all the right paths and you'll get there. And it's like, okay, easier said than done, right? Like, there's not actually like a signpost or anything leading me to the right path. I feel like I'm just guessing randomly.
Because guess what the next level does?
Okay.
Yeah, but don't worry, it does it in a very interesting way, I think, or at least has an interesting concept behind what they do with it. But yeah, like Legalism as a maze, I think is a really good representation of it. Because for people who are proponents of legalism, which there aren't really that many who would say it outright, they'll claim that it's really simple. Like, all you've got to do is this one thing, but then it turns into this whole set of rules that are harder and harder and harder to follow over time.
Yeah.
Like, how many times... Okay, I gotta make a jump here. Oh, get out of my way. I'm trying to make a jump. No, don't dodge. No dodging allowed. Just let me shoot you. Oh, dear. Okay, there we go. But how many times... Can I make this jump on my first try? I did. Do we know, like, people who say, well, Christianity's really easy. All you have to do is believe in Jesus. And then you prod a little bit and they go, well, actually, you also can't drink. And you can't smoke. You can't do drugs, not even marijuana. You can't be gay. You can't have the wrong kind of sex with the wrong person at the wrong time. You end up with these huge lists of things that...
Yeah, and this is why I think it's also kind of apt that the idea of a legalism being a trap, too, right? Because it's like, you're let in with this really simple premise of like, hey, it's all about Jesus saved us from our sin, and that's why we're qualified, or we're made righteous, and we're given salvation. But then they sneak in. There's all these other things you have to do, and it's sort of a little bit insidious in that it's like, well, we said that you had to love Jesus, and if you really loved Jesus, then you would not do these things anymore. And I don't think it's necessarily wrong to say that the posture that you have, like, in wanting to love Jesus, should change your behavior, but we put the cart before the horse and sort of use that as proof. Like, well, if you really love Jesus, then you would follow all these rules.
Yeah.
Just as a natural, overflow of your heart or whatever. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
but people are never going to be able to actually follow all those rules, notwithstanding whether those rules are actually,
Yeah, because it turns out
correct.
the rules that legalism focuses on, like I mentioned, the stuff like don't drink, don't smoke, that kind of stuff. These are the things that I would hear. Oh dear, there he is. A little bit of a jump scare for you. Rules that you're more likely to see from Christians. Christians aren't going to be like, well, if you really love Jesus, you'd be giving to the poor. That's like never
Yeah.
said, even though reading anything about Jesus, you're going to go, he was way more into helping the poor than he was into making sure you weren't smoking, right? Or he was way more into resisting the religious and political authorities than he was ever in whether you were gay. Like, that's the obvious from reading about Jesus, but the legalism where it says, well, if you really love Jesus, you would do these things, be like, they aren't even things that Jesus asked you to do.
Yeah, I mean, like, not to try to, like, sum up the entirety of what Jesus did or didn't say in a tiny conversation while we walk
Yeah.
through this marble maze, but I do think there's a degree of which I think legalism, again, legalism, I'm not going to personify it, but people who sort of adopt that mindset of like, here's a bunch of things you have to follow, they always tend to pick the things that are easy to point to as other. By other, I mean like something that you can easily point to somebody else and say, I don't do that, and I'm good, and you do that, so you're bad. Like,
Yeah.
it's really easy to point at behaviors like, oh, you drink, or oh, you're gay, or things like that, which I mean, arguably you could say for some of those things, like, oh, all you have to do is just not do that thing, and then you'll be good. But again, the whole point is not only are those things, some of them addictive, some of them just are like genetically disposed. But on top of that, like, not even getting into the question of like, are these things actually right or wrong? Like, again, they drink wine in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
So drinking isn't inherently bad, right? And so then you sort of go down this sort of, well, how can I prove that I'm even more like sincere in wanting to follow all the rules? So let's take this to the extreme. And now
Yeah.
moderation isn't even a thing. We have to go all the way to
Yep.
pure,
Speaking of which,
abstinence.
Christianity is
We
a
have
great
this one now.
burden because of its many rules.
It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery.
I wouldn't say that's the strongest verse to come back, but I think that works fine. Like, it's the reminder, like, it shouldn't be about you have to follow all the rules, because otherwise Christianity would be a burdensome religion to follow, because you would have to adopt so many different behaviors and rules and beliefs and stuff that no one would ever want to do that.
Yeah, and I think the unfortunate reality is the expression of it in our modern culture oftentimes is a burden to people. Even
Same
though
as
I
it
don't
ever
think
was.
most people would, I don't think most, non-Christian, secular, whatever you call them, I don't think most people would maybe say it the exact same way that it was said on that little pillar, but I think a lot of people do look at everything that they know of what the church expects of them, and they see it, and they're like, well, why would I ever want to subject myself to that? It feels like a burden, right? So
Speaking of signs telling you what to do, I'm just going to say up front, I could ignore and do the wrong thing and everything in this maze, but this isn't the type of game where if you deliberately break the rules, the designers are like, here's some hidden secrets we gave you. If I go to the right here, it's just a dead end. There's maybe some power-ups in there, but most of the dead ends have a bunch of enemies, and I'm not all about that. So I'm going to just follow the rule here, and this is the way through the maze.
interesting.
But then we have one in red. So yeah, it's a kind of simple system. A sign in black is to be obeyed. A sign in red is to be disobeyed. Not always to do the opposite. In this case, there really isn't a choice. It's right or left. Sometimes you just want to not do whatever it says rather than do the opposite. But that's how it works. Signs in black, do them. Signs in red, disobey.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure what the message is there, unless it's just to say it's confusing to know what you should and shouldn't do
Yeah.
when you have all these voices telling you.
Yeah, there is something to that. I feel like there's a bit of it being hampered by the game still has to be playable because
Yeah.
the messaging here being like there's just a bunch of rules, but ultimately when we follow the rules, we actually do succeed in this level. So like, there's a part of me that thinks it'd be really great is if they made the rules incomprehensible. Like maybe, okay, the red rule we're supposed to do it, but then one time it actually isn't, so it becomes hard to tell. Because in real life, dealing with legalism, the rules are inconsistent and contradictory and impossible. And one day they'll tell you to follow it, and the next day you will, and they say no, you're not supposed to do that. So yeah, but in the game, unfortunately, it has to be kind of simplified. So I know there's really nothing down that way. Am I floating above the river?
Kind of seems like it.
Kind of seems like.
Oh.
Let's jump in. Let's just walk on the. This okay. This is weird. This seems like it's a glitch. It is. I can walk through the walls. I hit the walk through the walls glitch. Fortunately, this patch has an instant fix. I'm gonna press this key and we're good. I press the G key, and we're in. So we're gonna swim. So that one says don't swim. There's another one later that says don't swim, and instead of it always being treated like do the opposite, this one we do want to swim. The other one it doesn't matter. Nothing happens if we do. But we do need to go this way.
Is there like a specific trigger for that glitch, or is it just kind of random? Because
it seems random.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember hitting it when we were first playing the game way back when, and I don't think we talked about it in the first level, but I remember the first time we ever played the game, we wandered around forever, and then I think we flipped through the wall into the underneath the stage to complete the level.
Yep.
And we were so confused.
Yeah, we thought that was how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, I just remember that and being so baffled and thinking that, like, did we just beat the game? Because it, like, drops you into a weird sort of sequence.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so strange. So yeah, that it seems to just happen randomly. I think it's just a function of the engine, and it might just be one of those that will never get better because computers now are way more advanced, and so that kind of stuff can happen. Again, made by two guys who were not game designers up to that point, and were basically figuring it out as they went. So there's a lot of bugs in the game that are pretty easily explainable as they just didn't know that would be a thing, and then it became a thing.
Well, this is back in the day too, where you would ship a game, and then any bugs you didn't find before you shipped were just in the game forever. So,
yeah, and it wasn't a popular enough game to get a patch. Yeah, I actually don't know how their sales were, but I know that they didn't make their money back. Like, they literally didn't, and the investment was just their parents giving them some money to work on it for a year. That was it. Yeah, that was the game. And the game wants me to save. I'm just going to do that just in case anything weird happens and glitches out. But yeah, this I like the concept of the rules maze, of sort of making the legalism part of the labyrinths a little more explicit. I wish it could be more complex, so it could drive home sort of the impossibility of sticking to oh, that's obvious secret. Let's go there. Sticking to legalism, but I understand that would be really difficult to iterate.
Yeah, well, I think the idea of the critique of legalism. Can you jump out there?
Yeah, can't jump out there. It's invisible, which is good. Otherwise, there'd be no way around.
You would, yeah.
Also, Palace of Pride is indeed this exact direction. They did it again. I checked the map.
Yeah.
Good attention to detail. Good designers. 10 out of 10.
Okay. I was going to say the critique of legalism. The idea is both that the rules are confusing because there's so many of them, and you don't always know because sometimes they are applied inconsistently, right? But also not just that they're confusing, but that they're impossible to uphold.
Yeah, that's too. And there's a sense like something that the game can't really get into, but one of the things about why the legalistic rules are confusing and impossible is because they're not really designed to be an earnest, like, genuine attempt at salvation. Like, the people who enforce legalism, not the people who maybe practice it, like, just, Joe and Mary from down at the community church who are getting a little bit too into legalism, probably earnestly believe that's what they should be doing. But the people who preach legalism, so the pastors and maybe even like the politicians who talk about that kind of stuff, the reason that the message is confusing and impossible is by design. So I'll go right here, because
Yeah.
the idea is to sort of flaunt the power. Like, if you think about it, if you, the person watching this, if you decide you're gonna, go to a certain church, and after a time you decide you're gonna cheat on your wife. Let's pretend you're a guy in a relationship here, and you cheat on your wife. Well, that's adultery. You're not supposed to do that. That's pretty obvious. Even people who aren't legalists will say you're not really supposed to do that. Kind of bums everybody out. So the church is going to turn on you pretty quick. They're going to go like, you're not supposed to do that. You need to repent. And of course, the person you cheated on your wife with will get a talking to if they go to the church. But if your pastor cheats on his wife, the church will rally around him because the message of the gospel needs to be preached. So it's for the sake of the kingdom. So there's no consequence for that man. And this is by design. The legalism, sort of the restriction on you, is meant not so much as a genuine expression of trying to get people to be more in love with their creator, as much as it is a way to say, you have to follow the law. We don't. We have the special relationship with God that makes us saved by faith. You have to work at it. That's
Yeah, well, it's applied
unfortunate, too.
selectively, right?
Yeah.
Because you're able, if you really want to, you can twist scripture, you can twist, the law, quote unquote, the law, biblical law, however you want to sort of say. Like you said, in one case, like, well, you've got to be punished for what you did, but in my case, I was just a weak, fallible man, and I fell to temptation. But isn't it great that the power of the gospel and the forgiveness of God is enough to overcome that, and I'm still saved. So the other thing too I was going to say is, like, we're talking about legalism and like preaching legalism or believing legalism. I think the thing to also kind of make note is it's not like anybody ascribes to legalism. Like, what do you believe? Oh, I believe in legalism. It's a term that we use to identify when somebody is making their religion all about a series of laws and rules and essentially justification by following those laws. So it's not like anyone's like, yes, I preach the gospel of legalism, but we use that word as a critique.
Yeah.
There's not really a positive or correct version of legalism. It's purely, at least in my knowledge, a term we always use, at least in the context of like the Christian church in the 20th century, as a critique.
That's sort of the thing about it, is like, it's not going to be, it's the type of thing you ascribe to your opponent. Your opponent will never describe themselves that way. But it's the same with pretty much anything that you could describe as a sin. So if you were like, I don't believe in adultery. My opponent, however, the adulterer, they would probably go, hey, hold on a second. I don't call myself that. Right?
Yeah.
So,
well, actually, that's an interesting point too, because I think a big part of legalism is holding a set of standards and then trying to make everybody else follow those standards, even if they don't ascribe to them or even think that they're running afoul of them. And it's all about, not all about perspective, but like when you are on the inside, so to speak, of the group of people who are enforcing or following the rules, so to speak, people on the outside probably don't even realize that you're holding them to this standard, and like, I never consented to this standard. Like, why are you judging me according to it?
I mean, generally it's how it is. Like, people who are, really deep down the hole of legalism tend not to be restricting their negative thoughts to themselves. Like, you'd think if you wanted to be a legalist, whatever, you would be very hard on yourself, but you wouldn't be as hard on other people because you really can't control that. By the way, this room, the way this works, I have to follow all the signs in a certain order, and the game won't really recognize it unless I get pretty close to them. So you're going to watch me go up and bonk my head against every sign. That's just to make sure the game registers that I'm following the path. And here, I don't want to do what it says because it's in red, but I also don't want to do the opposite. So I'm going to just keep moving.
Interesting.
Anyway, but yeah, like, it ends up being enforced in such a way, which is why I think fear and self-righteousness are the best choices for enemies of this, because people who are legalistic are going to be alternating between living in fear because they're not living up to the standard, and also a sense of like judgmentalism because no one else is either, and so there's a way to feel superior to people.
It's sort of an example of projection, right? I know that one of the biggest things about growing up in a context where there was a degree of legalism, and it definitely makes you question yourself, and you feel like you're the only one who's failing to live up to the standards, and so you
Yeah.
kind of isolate yourself, and you live in this sort of fearful mindset that like people are gonna find out that I'm no good, that I'm secretly like I'm a hypocrite.
Yeah.
I say that I believe in you know in God. I say that I believe in living righteously, but I'm actually a terrible, terrible person. So that's where the fear comes in for me, I think. And it's a good juxtaposition
Yeah.
to the self righteousness of like um, the people who probably on the inside know that they're just as wretched as the next person, but put on this mask of
Yeah.
self righteousness and holier than
Well,
thou.
let's suppose, like, yeah, we make it about we have to follow all these rules, and I'm doing terrible at following the rules, but at least I'm following the rule that says don't do drugs, right?
Yeah,
So
at
if
least I'm
someone else
better
is
than
doing drugs,
you.
at least I'm not as bad as them. And if they
Yeah, and
want to
again,
get
it's
holy,
it's always
then
something very easy to like point out, right? Because like if somebody's struggling with an addiction to drugs or alcohol or something, it's something you can point to because I mean, inevitably that's gonna have a very visible negative impact on their life, and it's easy to point to that. Like, hey, it's a really obvious example of the impact of this terrible, terrible sin. Whereas there's other sins that you can sort of keep secret, um, and nobody can. There's not really an as obvious of a visible manifestation of those, and so it's easier for you to kind of keep those close to your chest while you judge other people for much more obvious sins, and,
mhm.
and not even getting into the fact that some of those quote unquote sins are things that actually people should be getting help for, not judged for.
Yeah, exactly. And like this isn't all to say that every single person who practices legalism is doing so purely as a sort of control uh, sort of psychology, like a way to control the masses, because that's usually one of the sort of conspiracy theories about any sort of religion. It's just a way to control people. However, if you are going to try to control people, legalism is sort of the way to go, because it totally works on that sense of making sure people on the in group are feeling very, very fearful about their state before God, very, very afraid of stepping out of line, while at the same time feeling superior to the out group, so that they never at any point like consider the possibility that the out group might actually have the truth instead of them, right? So it's very
Yeah,
useful, and it's not restricted to Christianity in that way, although it's not called legalism when other people do it. It's just when Christianity does it.
yeah. Well, and I think the thing too is it forces you into a mindset where you don't question or seek to actually deepen your understanding of your faith. You
Yeah.
just have a boundary that you're not supposed to cross, and that kind of defines your faith. Is like,
Yeah.
oh well, you stay in the bounds, and that's how you know you're a good Christian. Kind of stunts growth, in my opinion.
Yeah. Totally. But yeah, like honestly, this level really, I think, nails it as far
You
as
can be
that
good
goes.
enough to get into heaven.
For it is by grace that you have been saved through faith, and this not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast.
That's an easy one. That one's a gimme. That's very Christianity 101. Like that's although I will say the irony of this. So that verse we just read, for it is by grace you have been saved, is actually Ephesians 2 chapter 2 verses 8 and 9, and it was listed as Ephesians 2 verse 10. So 8 and 9 says, for it's by grace you've been saved through faith, not of yourselves. Verse 10 says, for you have been created to perform good works. So I think there's a little bit of delicious irony in that sort of that typo there, which probably raises questions more complex than this game is really equipped to handle. But otherwise, like Christianity 101, perfect answer to someone saying you can be good enough to get into heaven. It's like that's not how it works.
Image is everything.
This last one confused me as a kid. Image is everything. I was like, what does this have to do with legalism? But I think what they're going for with image is not sort of like the media idea of image as in branding. It's probably more to do with the concept of appearing to be righteous rather than actually being righteous. I think that's what this is going for, but it's worded in a kind of funny way. I think this is the scroll for that.
All a man's ways seem right to him, but the Lord weighs the heart.
Yep, that's all 4 pillars. I'm now locked in place. I can't move anymore. Oh, no, I can move. No, I can't move again. We're gonna hear some like super hard rock and dad music in just a minute here, so everyone get ready for that.
What I'm really here for. Oh yeah. Legalism.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then the next level starts.
Oh yeah.
It's
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh yeah. For some reason,
That's
even
what
if
we're
music
for.
is off, that one starts to play.
Well, you wouldn't want to miss that, right?
Yeah. So yeah, here's the title card for level 3, which when I do the video for level 3, we won't see that title card again. But it's New Age Nirvana, and we'll save our thoughts for video number 3 then. But that will finish off level 2. That was the Labyrinths of Legalism. Again, I think from a messaging standpoint, it is going to be far and away the most like cohesive, powerful argument that the game will ever present for its beliefs. And we're going to follow it up with the weakest one, so get ready for that.
Perfect.
Yeah, any final thoughts for my millions of adoring fans?
This is sort of tangential to specifically the level we just watched, but something that does come to mind for me,
Yeah.
right? Like, we're playing this game, we're kind of just off the top of our head, just sort of spitballing things that the levels and the themes bring to mind. At least for me, this is not a polished, refined view of like
true.
my beliefs. This is kind of off the top of my head thoughts. So
Same.
I don't know if anybody's like listening to us talk and they're like, well, wait a second, you're saying seems like you contradicted yourself, or it seems like you're not thinking very deep
Yeah,
about
we're
this.
not.
Like we're spitballing,
Yeah,
but
this is not an
I
apologetics
think
course. We're just reacting to
yeah,
what we see.
but I think it's a good level to also kind of engage with this content. Is like you can only really you have a first impression, like that first layer of like how you engage with something while you're consuming it from a media standpoint. So that's kind of the layer we're on here. I don't know if we're going to be digging a little deeper at all later, but just kind of wanted to put that out there because I'm sure someone somewhere probably is watching this and going like, "Well, I didn't find that to be a very compelling argument that you just made." So, you know, I guess I would say,
Yeah.
it sounds like legalism to me. No,
Yeah, I'm not too worried about that, but yeah, it is very much we spitball from our own perspective as well. The other thing I'd want to say, might as well make this video just a bunch of talking at the end. Is to say like because it's spitballing here, like we're not making this video to like trash on the developers, even though I at least have pointed out some stuff in the game I think is not really great design. But I'm not doing that in this like I'm a reviewer and the developers need to listen to what I say and get better because this game was made 25 years ago. The devs have moved on to other things, and like I genuinely think like it's a good thing that they made their passion project. So it's not about like I want to play this game to dissect their Christianity and point out why they're wrong about it. It's just more if you make a game that's full of symbolism, don't blame me for reading the symbolism and then interpreting it and that interpretation not being incredibly favorable because I'm just trying to respond to what the text is saying. Uh, and there's a lot of it. There's just a lot of symbolism. And I think the level 2 is really good with it. Any mistakes I would say for level 2 from a messaging point of view is merely just not going as far as I would like. But I'm a person who likes pretentious arty games like The Witness. So, whereas a level like the one that's going to come up in the next video we record, I will probably have a lot more harsh critique. But again, I would want to stress it is not because I think the developers are in any way like bad or something. It's just it's gonna fall flat on its face. There's no saving this next level. I cannot spin it positively. There's nothing we do.
well,
Aesthetically, I
now
can, but messaging wise,
now
I
I'm
can't.
gonna
Yeah,
now I'm gonna spin it positive just to
yeah.
spite.
Just to be nice, yeah. From a messaging perspective, like I think level 3 is more fun to play than level 2. Unfortunately, level 2 is kind of dull. But if you start to think about what the developers are saying, whether or not they're trying to, it's just analyze the text that is there, what is in the game. So how do you interpret what exists rather than imagining what the authors were thinking? there is no interpretation of level 3 that makes the authors look educated on this subject matter at all,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Well, hey, spoilers for the next
Spoilers,
one.
but that's because level 2 is critiquing the church. Level 2 is critiquing the world of Christianity, which they're familiar with. The call is coming from inside the house. Level 3, like level 1, is critiquing outside that body, and so they're not as familiar with it. They just aren't, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I think we save the rest of those thoughts for next time.
Yeah, there's
cut
going
this
to be a
one
lot. Don't worry.
short.
I've got a lot.
Can't wait for that.
Yeah, it didn't age as well as the other levels, unfortunately. Yeah, so we'll see it then. I could probably drone on and on just standing looking at this object, this tantalizing level here. But I'm going to stop the video here, and we'll see people in the next one. In the meantime, I've been Key of W, everyone's favorite YouTuber. You can tell by my number of subscribers. And with me has been Empfindsamer. This has been a really great time. Thanks for watching. See you next time.